She came in smiling as if the courtroom was under her control. After all, one secret is best kept within the family. That's what 17-year-old Sarah Patrick Grace believed and was confident about until everything changed in her face. Her lawyers painted her as harmless, an ordinary teenager, someone incapable of violence, someone who could never commit the crimes now stacked against her. Family members nodded along. Her grandfather insisted on her innocence. To the outside world, Sarah was the picture of normalcy, but appearances can deceive. Because what happened on the morning of February 20th, 2025 would shatter that illusion. Early morning, around 7:15 a.m. in Carrollton, Georgia, a 5-year-old girl wandered into her parents' bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. What she found is a scene that no child should ever see. Her father, 45-year-old James Brock, and her mother, 41-year-old Kristen Brock, were sprawled across the floor, motionless. Blood pooled around them, staining carpet and sheets alike. The child's cries tore through the quiet house. 17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick arrived seconds later. She tried to soothe her half-sister Jay, wrapping her in trembling arms, whispering words that couldn't undo what had happened. When calm proved impossible, Sarah did what she thought was right. She called the police. Within minutes, Carroll County officers descended on the home. Nearly half a dozen deputies stepped over the threshold. They found the couple together in the bedroom, multiple gunshot wounds marking their bodies. But nothing else made sense. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, no smashed windows, no kicked-in doors. Just one bedroom door, slightly ajar. The home was sealed off. Yellow tape cut across the lawn as crime scene technicians began their methodical work. Investigators felt the unease that comes from realizing this was not a random crime. It was intimate. Someone who knew the family, knew their routines, had planned this with precision. The surviving children became the immediate concern. Social services needed answers, and fast. Caitlin O'Keefe, a longtime family friend, stepped in to care for the girls. Sarah returned to school within days, composed, polite, almost unnervingly calm. Teachers marveled at her ability to maintain routine after such a trauma. Friends saw a teenager holding herself together for the sake of her little sister. But beneath that veneer of control, something else was quietly taking shape. A plan no one could yet see. Because while the world mourned, Sarah's story had already begun to diverge from the truth. And when it finally surfaced, it revealed a truth far darker than anyone imagined. Sarah's mother, Kristen, had been divorced once before. After that marriage ended, she began seeing James Brock. They spent 10 years together before finally marrying in December 2023, blending their families into one household. Sarah and her older brother were Kristen's children from her first marriage. 5-year-old Jay was James's daughter from a previous relationship. On the surface, they look perfect, but appearances are often deceiving. James suffered from severe heart problems. He relied on an LVAD device, a surgically implanted battery-powered mechanical pump that kept his failing heart alive. It was a last resort measure, keeping him alive until doctors could find a donor heart. He had nearly died in 2021, and Kristen had begged for prayers on Facebook. He survived until February 20th, 2025. The couple had a history with drugs, the kind that had destroyed Kristen's first marriage in 2018 and sparked a bitter custody battle. Eventually, Kristen gained primary custody. The children's father had visitation on alternate weekends. By all outward appearances, the family had moved on. They had found religion, joined Catalyst Church in Carrollton, and appeared devoted, volunteering and attending regularly. When James and Kristen died, the church held a memorial service. Friends filled the pews, family members spoke through tears, and Sarah was allowed to speak too. Then, investigators discovered something that changed everything. Before the murders, Sarah had a TikTok account like millions of other teens. But unlike most TikTokers, she had a particular fascination: true crime. She devoured stories of murder, obsession, and deception. She knew the genre inside and out, the patterns, the methods, the way investigators followed evidence. After her parents' deaths, Sarah did something unusual. She began messaging true crime influencers across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. She wanted them to cover her parents' murder, pitching it as a story that would sell. Court documents reveal the pattern. Repeated messages, almost identical in tone and wording. One read, "Hey, I was wondering if you would be able to cover my parents' murder case. It's super interesting, and I think your audience would love it. Super interesting." Her words about the people who raised her, who fed her, who kept her safe. She framed their deaths as contempt. One creator was disturbed enough to report it immediately. Screenshots went straight to investigators, becoming part of the evidence that would define her case. Others Other creators reported similar messages. Sarah had been deliberate, systematically reaching out, shaping the narrative of a crime she had just committed before anyone even suspected her. The defense claimed it was grief, a way to process trauma through familiar channels. True crime had always been her interest, but prosecutors saw something else entirely: control, a calculated effort to manipulate perception, even before charges were filed. Then there was the morning itself. Investigators pieced together the timeline. Sarah claimed she had been asleep the entire night, woke only to her little sister's screams, and hadn't heard a thing. But the LVAD machine changes everything. Remember that device keeping James alive? Its alarm is loud, insistent, impossible to ignore. It signals emergency, battery failure, cardiac distress, internal bleeding, and Sarah heard it. Between 11:40 p.m. and 11:50 p.m., 10 to 20 minutes before she claimed to have fallen asleep, the device alarmed. But she did nothing, didn't check, didn't alert anyone, didn't call for help. She simply went to sleep. Let that sink in. She heard the critical, life-saving alarm, but she didn't hear the gunshots. Multiple shots fired inside the house, just down the hall. The defense argued exhaustion, teen sleep patterns, but the evidence told a darker story. She knew, because she was the one who pulled the trigger. Forensic analysis only reinforced the narrative. Ballistics, blood spatter, and trajectory studies all pointed to a killer who stood close, intimate, deliberate. Both victims were shot multiple times while asleep and defenseless. No signs of struggle, no defensive wounds, pillows and comforters left in place, as if death had quietly passed through the room. The first 4 months after the murders, the story had faded from headlines. The world seemed to have moved on. Sarah Grace Patrick had returned to a routine. Then, on July 8th, everything changed. The Carroll County Sheriff's Office submitted an arrest warrant. 17-year-old Sarah was charged with 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault. She would be tried as an adult, subject to the harshest sentencing guidelines if convicted. 2 people, her guardians, her family, murdered in their sleep, shot multiple times. No mercy given. She turned herself in with her biological father, driving her to the station. The question everyone asked was simple. How did authorities connect Sarah to the murders? How did they discover what no one could imagine? A teenager capable of executing such a plan. The official statements remained sparse. Carroll County kept its cards close, protecting the case for trial. But the evidence trail, pieced together from the fragments of a digital age, painted a damning portrait. Her devices were seized immediately. No time to hide, no time to delete. Digital forensic experts combed through everything. Search histories, text messages, social media activity, deleted files painstakingly recovered. Nothing escaped scrutiny. The searches themselves told a story. How to dispose of a gun? Can police trace bullets? How long does forensic analysis take? Screenshots, timestamps, all preserved. Every digital breadcrumb led investigators closer to the truth. The TikTok messages she sent to influencers, once interpreted as grief or curiosity, now looked deliberate. Neighbors, too, hinted at trouble behind closed doors. Kristen had confided in one neighbor about Sarah's behavior, describing defiance, escalating arguments, and tension within the household. However, the murder weapon remained hidden. It was never found. Every room, yard, drainage, ditch, storm sewer, pond, scoured. No registered firearms in the household. No evidence of ownership. No trace of ammunition. The question lingered. Where did the gun come from? An outside source? An illegal private sale? Cash transaction? No record, no paper trail. Surveillance likely played a key role. Even in a rural area, cameras were everywhere. Doorbells, security systems, traffic cams. A single lens could have captured Sarah leaving the house late at night, carrying something, walking somewhere she shouldn't. But nothing has been found till now. Then came the bond hearing, the moment Sarah had expected to walk free. She entered the courtroom smiling like a teenager who came to watch her favorite play and didn't stop even when she's on the seat. The defense presented character witnesses. First, the family's pastor, Ben Bonner of Catalyst Church, and mostly about how Sarah is a good faithful. Then Caitlin O'Keefe, Sarah's guardian, attesting to her daily behavior and routines. She didn't omit the absence of warning signs. Teachers, friends, neighbors all described a normal teenager, attentive in class, kind, polite, even happy at times. The courtroom energy shifted. The defense seemed to be gaining ground. Optimism at the table grew. Maybe this would work. Maybe Sarah would walk free. Then Kim Bowling took the stand, James Brock's sister, and everything changed. She spoke not to defend, not to witness character, but to speak for the dead. For the first time, Sarah's carefully cultivated composure met a force it could not dominate. And in that moment, the room seemed to realize appearances can lie, but evidence and grief never do. For Kim Bowling, there was no question. Sarah Grace Patrick had killed her parents. Every piece of evidence pointed in one direction. Justice demanded she remain behind bars. No leniency, no bond, no chance of returning to the world outside. Perhaps the most gut-wrenching testimony came from James Brock's 12-year-old son. Too young to speak for himself, his words were written down and read aloud by family friend Kelly Brown. Each line carried the weight of a childhood destroyed, of innocence stolen. Sarah's actions hadn't just ended lives, they had shattered them. The ripples spread through family, friends, and the wider community, leaving wounds that would never fully heal. And that smile, the one she had worn so confidently when she first walked into the courtroom, was gone, vanished. She sat at the defense table, eyes cast downward, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. The defense tried to reclaim the narrative. Sarah was a child, they argued, a teenager pushed to the edge, making terrible choices under impossible circumstances. But the prosecutors didn't agree that what she needed was rehabilitation. But the court wasn't convinced. After hearing the testimony, the judge delivered the ruling. Bond denied. Sarah would remain in Carroll County Jail. No house arrest, no ankle monitor, full detention until trial. The charges were severe. 2 counts each of malice murder and felony murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault, 2 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, 8 counts total. The case was far from over. Prosecutors stated that the investigation remained active. Additional evidence was yet to be revealed, and further arrests connected to the murders could still follow. Do you think Sarah did this only, or the investigations will expose more damning evidence? Or she didn't even do it at all? Let's have your opinion in the comments.